Hi, everyone. Welcome to Research on the Road. Uh, Today we're doing a belated Mother's Day presentation. We're going to be talking about how snakes and rattlesnakes in particular, but there are a variety of species, actually have what's called ovoviviparity. And we'll talk more about what that is, but basically it's pregnancy in a snake. They're not laying eggs the way that you think that most reptiles or most snakes might do. So I'm going to go ahead and start a presentation here. All right, so we are a week late, but happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and to all the mother rattlesnakes. Basically, so the word I said was ovoviviparity, and that just comes from the roots ovo meaning egg, viv meaning life or living, and pair, which means produce or bring forth. So altogether, it's just producing a living thing from an egg. So, but it's all egg-born hatchlings are living things, of course, but they're not born live the way that we think of them. So these rattlesnakes, they actually have hatching is internal. So the mother doesn't build a nest and lay these eggs. She keeps them inside of herself until they hatch, and then live babies are actually born. And so, Chelsea, you were saying that that's common in other species of snakes as well, right? So the vipers in general.
I was just talking about maternal attendance happens in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I'm not actually sure if other non-rattlesnakes do that or not.
Yeah, all Viperidae and all boas are do this ovoviviparity. Yeah.
Well, I've got a rosy boa right over my shoulder here. Not on my shoulder, but next to my shoulder. So, unfortunately, they're both boys, so they don't know that method very well. Okay, so basically, like I said, I mean, it's not exactly accurate to call it a pregnancy the way that we think of it as a placental mammal has, but because it is internal incubation of eggs. But they are carrying these babies throughout the duration of their development. So they're getting the nutrients from a yolk, not a placenta, and they're remaining encased in eggs, but they're going to hatch inside the mother's body. And so this is a gravid female over here, and she's pretty chunky. So you can tell, and maybe Daniel and Chelsea, you have more to add to this. Do you have you actually had gravid female rattlesnakes on hand, or do you are they that much bigger? Are they noticeably pregnant?
Yeah, with my time definitely out in the field I've been able to find multiple different species that are gravid or currently have these developing eggs inside of them. You can tell a noticeable change due to the fact that there's separation within the scales. So a lot of people don't know this, but snakes actually have skin very similar to ours. What happens is that skin develops, it gets harder with like our fingernails called keratin, and that's how you end up with the scales. So when a snake either eats a really big meal or is gravid, you'll see separation in the scales, so you can see the skin in between. And that's usually how you can tell. I'm pretty sure I have a gravid female here that I'll show you guys all later.
Okay, awesome. So Daniel, you were saying that the scale separation is noticeable in gravid rattlesnakes. So having seen this picture, would this be something that you would look at and know offhand that is a gravid female rattlesnake?
The only issue with that one is if you notice, you can see separation in the scales all the way up to like the head.
Right.
So that could be not the case for this one. This one could actually be filling itself up with air to make itself look bigger.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because it's defensive. That separation in the scales you'll see closer to the bottom half of the body of the animal.
Okay.
So not the entire. But I mean, if this animal is gravid, it could be that that's why she's acting more defensively. as a
Right.
matter of fact, especially if she's really close to either dropping all of those eggs or she's just scared, or it's a fat snake. That happens too. In
Yeah, that
captivity,
could-
there are lots of animals that eat a little too much, and you end up with some separation of scales.
I think healthy snake is what we're looking at, right? A well-nourished snake.
A very healthy snake. That's a possibility.
So here is a boa that is another example that we mentioned, was that most snakes, while they're oviparous, which is they lay eggs. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is a python, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah.
hatching from an egg.
Yeah, I was gonna
Dial
say
that
that's a
back.
python.
So, most snakes are oviparous. They're egg layers, like this python here, and they're going to hatch directly from an egg that the mother has laid.
Oh.
Rattlesnakes, though, are emerging live. So this is a newly born baby rattlesnake. It still has the membrane encasement around it that was internalized within the mother while it was developing. And so here's the process itself. They are not laying eggs, they are laying live babies. And they carry them for about 3 months, but it can be longer. It depends on the species of snake. We would say on average, it's about 3 months for the warmer climate species. Whereas if they live in a cooler climate, they might carry those eggs for incubation, gestation for a longer period of time. In a timber rattlesnake, which are among those that live in the cooler temperature regions, it can be as long as 5 months. And so like we see here and saw better in that last slide, was that the babies are born up wrapped up in the membrane. So the egg casing, the egg shell, in quotation marks, has essentially dissolved, but the membranes and the proteins that you think of as coming from within an egg are still around those developing young. And so here's a couple of little babies. Dr. Fox's boot for scale in that bottom one.
Oh,
And so rattlesnakes in warmer regions tend to give birth annually. And so depending on the breeding season that they have partaken of, it's usually late summer or early fall. Those that live further north are more likely to breed every 2 years and give birth in late spring. So am I correct actually in saying that? Is it because there's 2 periods of rattlesnake breeding season, at least locally, in the spring and in the fall. Are all of them synchronized in having basically birth essentially in the summertime? Is it carried over from the previous fall's mating period? Is it like sperm storage, or are there different periods of gestation involved in that?
This always really confuses me because it seems like some species do mate in the spring and fall.
Right.
So if they're mating in the fall, they would do sperm storage.
Okay.
But then they might mate again in the spring. They could do multiple matings. I don't know. I'm sure Daniel's more knowledgeable on this than me.
Yeah, so when it comes to rattlesnakes, it does get very complicated, especially when you're looking at different species. But then you have to also take into account how much that animal has eaten that year.
Right.
If they are at a good weight, did it rain that year? Because some rattlesnakes will actually hold on to their babies until the rains actually come.
Okay.
Because you have to remember, these animals, when they first come out, when they first emerge, that first layer of skin is very susceptible to drying out. So some of these animals will actually hold on to their babies until the right conditions. And then with sperm storage, that gets crazy complicated.
Yeah.
Some species can hold multiple partners and use it, which I don't think we know how that works yet.
So multiple fathers, multiple paternity within a single clutch.
Uh-huh. And then nowadays we're seeing a lot of females that have never been with another male dropping
Right.
eggs or dropping babies. So I'm sure it's happened a couple
Parthenogenesis.
times with rattlesnake species, so that gets weirder.
As the person who's probably least knowledgeable about rattlesnakes in this room, how does the gestation of ovoviviparous snakes compare to the gestation plus incubation time of oviparous snakes? Is it comparable, or?
I would say it's fairly comparable, right? It's probably on the order of 60 to 80 days of incubation for an egg layer, whereas on average 3 months seems about the same range. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's also like I said, each species is different. Yeah, it's very similar. The main difference though with these species is, well, actually, it differs. Some pythons actually will lay the clutch of eggs and then they'll wrap around their eggs and actually keep them warm and protect them. Some species will lay them and then they'll just leave. And basically, if you survive, you survive. If you don't, you don't. But with vipers and boas, you have something that's completely different. You're not stationary in one area. You can actually move and carry the
Right.
the next generation with you. So if you don't like one spot, I can move over here. If it's too cold, I can move over here. Now it's warmer. If I'm in a safe environment, I can leave and take all of my babies and hard work with me and make sure they're safe. So if
So-
anything, that's the biggest difference.
Better temperature regulation and more consistency in the incubation period.
And safer at the same time. Well, as long as she survives, the rest will survive as well.
Right. Okay.
So I can speak better about snakes like pit vipers, which is other venomous snakes, not just the rattlesnakes, in colder regions, and why they can only breed every few years. And a lot of that has to do with energy and temperature. So in cold regions, it's not like in Southern California where it's hot all the time. There's winter, and their kind of optimal thermal time of the year is more limited. And when a snake is gravid, she spends all of her time basking, essentially, because it's really important to maintain an optimal thermal temperature, because snakes are ectotherms, so they can't generate their own optimal temperature. They have to get it from their environment. And keeping their babies kind of cooked at a good temperature is really important to make sure that they develop properly.
Right.
And because this is so important, many snakes, well, not all species, I don't know, and I'm sure there's some exceptions, but many mothers will just kind of exclusively bask and they won't forage during their pregnancy. And so that means by the time that they give birth, their body condition is like severely depleted. They're really, really,
Right.
really skinny. They don't have any fat stores. And so because of that, it can be really difficult for them to breed every year.
Right.
It takes them a year or two to build up enough fat stores for them to be able to breed again.
That makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah.
Here is another freshly emerged neonate, and the babies are fully developed and that can be completely independent once they're born. So that goes back to what Daniel was saying, was that the mother is basically providing the protection for them that they would receive within the eggshell. They're able to develop to a point where they can fend for themselves and they are independent snakes at the time of their birth, because their mother has been sort of their barrier, their protection for the entirety of the development period. And there's typically about 4 to 10 in a brood in a single clutch. And so I would imagine that also varies with the amount of resources available and the climate that they live in, right? So Chelsea, do you think that there would be reduced clutches in those more northern areas in colder climates?
I'm not sure about that. I think that body size may have a bigger
Right.
impact.
Daniel's
Yes,
giving us
yes,
a thumbs up.
Yes, yeah. Species size 4 to 10. No, you're talking like the Eastern Diamondback. You can have up to like 30 individuals.
Really?
Yeah. These clutch sizes get big as the snake gets big. Trust me. And then other species of vipers, you can have a lot of babies. You can have a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if like region impacts that though. That's kind of interesting. I'm not sure.
I do think though, it like if you had a bad season where there wasn't enough food, I think that would affect you,
Right.
or at least the the young would come out maybe possibly skinnier or not with as much nutrients because it wasn't provided to them.
That's a question. Yeah. Would they allocate the resources towards having smaller eggs, but the same number of eggs, or would they produce fewer eggs?
And
I
then
don't know. These are like
with
all
more
really good
nutrients.
questions for a study that someone needs
Yeah,
to
true.
do.
That would be hard to study though, because they're inside of her. So
I'm sure there are.
Monitor, you could do it as sort of like an ecological study, just kind of gauging the average number of eggs produced in each clutch of rattlesnakes that you're observing based on the um like rainfall period or something within a given year. You could have it like a long-term study.
that's true.
Or you could control it in the lab. I'm sure people have done studies
Okay.
of like number of babies versus size of babies. I'm sure that that's been done before, but it's a really interesting question.
I know they have in turtles, but I wouldn't know about snakes. Despite all the care that the mother has put into allowing these eggs to gestate internally, and the specific behaviors that she's adopted during that time period to keep them and herself safe and at an optimal temperature, once they're born, it's pretty much the end of her parenting. So there's a little, you might call it maternal care for about 7 to 10 days beyond the point where they're born. If they're born in a den, they'll probably sort of remain there. They typically stay with the mother until their first shed, which is typically 7 to 10 days. And it's not that they're going to flee and disperse. They'll probably stay within a reasonable area, but they're not they're not caring for the offspring.
Well, they're potentially guarding them.
That's fair.
There have been some studies done on maternal attendants. From what I've read, they're in cottonmouths, which again are not rattlesnakes. They're just another pit viper, venomous snake. And they did find that mother cottonmouth had reduced defensive behavior when they were attending their newly born offspring as opposed to when they weren't with their offspring. So there is some kind of attendance guarding potentially behavior going on to protect them from predators. So if you reduce your defensive behavior, you're drawing less attention to yourself and your babies. So,
and would that be beyond the time period of that first shed, or is that
it's during that time period?
Okay.
That brief window, and then yeah, mom goes on her way. If it's like in a, I guess, colder region, she maybe will start heading towards the den to overwinter. And something else that I think is starting to come out in the literature a little bit is that it seems like the mothers are giving birth really close to these dens, because then the babies scent trail mom or another individual of the same species to the dens. And so if she gives birth really close, they don't have to go as far. And that's really important, because if they can't find a den and they can't find somewhere to kind of get down before it gets too cold, then they'll die over winter. So she's providing care in that way as well, I guess.
That's true. Inviting them to stay at home, even if she's not enforcing it. So we were already talking to this point that the babies are benefiting from the mother's constant protection of and her body's regulation of incubation temperatures. So she is able to control the temperature of eggs developing by controlling where she is in her position relative to a source of warmth. This also, they're born with only one rattle, and that's called the button, right? And so at what point do they start adding to the button? So the button lasts beyond the first shed, but is it extended within a year, like we typically think of it? Like the idea is always that you can gauge the age of a rattlesnake by the number of rattles. Is that true?
No, the reason why, again, is it depends on how well an animal is eating, because you'll add another increment almost every time you shed. So right. I'm eating really well, I'm growing really fast, I'm going to shed a lot more, I'm going to end up with a really long tail. Also, the species as well. Some add tips, another addition to the rattle itself, like every week and a half.
Yeah.
Just because they're just have tiny long rattles, like there was this one sidewinder I found one time, super long tail, but you knew it was only about a year old just because of its size. So, the size of the animal, not the rattle.
My understanding too is that, they can break off. So you can't use that as an accurate measurement.
That happens all the time, actually. They're shaking it and it hits a rock, or I pick it up by the tail and I pop off.
You're just throwing off people's estimation of that rattlesnake's age. You're doing it on purpose. That appears to be the end of my presentation. All right. Well, Daniel, you want to show us some snakes?
Yeah. All right. So it looks like it is my turn. So real quick, I just want to say Happy Mother's Day from Wild Man Dan and Research on the Road to all the mothers out there. Whether you're a scorpion, a tarantula, a rattlesnake, or a human being, Happy Mother's Day. I've got a few different animals that I want to show you guys. One of them I think is a possibly gravid female that I'm going to show you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about these beautiful and incredible creatures. These are venomous animals. I am professional. I've been doing this for a long time, and I study them at Loma Linda. Please don't attempt to do anything that you're going to see now at home or outside, wherever. If you leave the animal alone, you have a way less of a chance of getting bit. So without further ado, let me show you guys one of the coolest things I found so far. So this is just to give you an idea of how small a baby actually can be. This right here is a baby Massasauga. It's one of the smallest species of rattlesnakes probably in the United States besides the pygmy rattlesnake. And as you can see, I'm holding a quarter. I found this outside when I flipped over a rock. It looks like this animal died at a very, very young age, probably almost maybe like 2 weeks after it was laid by the mother. And it probably died either because it couldn't get any nutrients, or maybe it was just too dry that time. And so, as you can see, it just dried out. But some of these species, these babies are super tiny, which is why when they're born, they have 2 fangs and plenty of venom to protect themselves with. And not only that, as Chelsea was mentioning, they also have a mother for about the first week to 10 days that stays around and guards them to a certain degree. There's also been studies done that show that these females are usually more defensive during this time frame. So they're more likely to bite, they rattle longer, they're more likely to rattle. So these females, it really does look like they're actually trying to protect and maintain these babies that they work so hard on taking care of. Like Emily was saying, gestation period varies very much so with rattlesnake species, but one rattlesnake that almost everybody knows is the Western Diamondback. That one has a gestation period of about 160 to 180 days. So as you can see, it's a long time for these mamas to, one, go without eating, because they usually do not eat anything during that time frame. And it's a lot of work. You got to make sure that you're getting enough water, that temperatures are regulated and everything like that. So right here is a Massasauga, like I was just showing you. This is a little baby, the one that I have dried out right here. And then this one is a subadult, almost full grown. I have another one that I have here. Let me just put this guy down for a second. This snake hook is way too big. Let me show you guys this other one. I've got quite a few rattlesnakes to show you guys today. And just get this little guy. And then here's another one. She's a little bit bigger than this guy down here. But this is probably one of the smallest species that we have here. And just beautiful, beautiful animals. These species will probably lay at around 4 to 10 individuals. And they're just so cute. I love how tiny they are. And they have tiny little rattles. I'm going to see if I can show you guys this guy's rattle. So you just can see how small it is. Oh my goodness, you are trying to strike. What are you doing? No, the snake hook is gonna hurt. You see him bite the snake hook? It's okay. These guys are very jumpy. They're probably one of the harder ones to take care of. I'm just gonna, there you go. There that one goes. So Emily was showing you guys the button, which is true. These babies do have one button. That's what it's called. You can actually see it on this guy. See if it'll focus. Are we focused? So if you look at the very tip of the tail, there's actually a little projection that's made out of keratin, the same stuff our fingernails are, and that is the button. After a couple sheds, that rattle will continue to grow, and then they'll be able to actually make that defensive noise, which is warning you you're either too close and you need to get back. So really awesome. But let me show you another difference in size of one of my favorite rattlesnake species, which is the Crotalus pyrus, or the speckled rattlesnake. And we're gonna do the same thing with you. Just gonna right into the button. So here we have one that is about maybe a year to a year and a half old. And then right here, we have a full-grown adult speckled rattlesnake. So you can see there's a really big size difference between these guys. This guy is a big male, and then I'm not too sure what sex this one is. They're usually pretty calm, but you can see there's a really big size difference. So these babies, they definitely, need that protection from the very beginning. And these mothers do a really, really great job. The other reason why the female will stick around for about a week to a week and a half is because these babies are in that egg sac inside of the mother, right? So it's a very moist and wet environment. And when they come out to that dry and harsh environment, which they're born into, they need to remove that first layer of skin that was permeable to moisture, so that they can have that really nice, thick, and protective layer of skin after that shed, so that they can get out and retain that moisture as they forage and strive to become adults and then breed once again. I'm gonna see if I can grab this little guy. I want to show you guys this guy's, because he still has his button. The button usually falls off of these babies after about a year. So if you look right there, let's see if it'll focus. Right there, you can actually see that very first button. That's the button right there. And usually that falls right off. Right now, this guy's got about 2 links. So really, really beautiful. But I love these guys. They're great mothers, and not only are rattlesnakes, but there are a lot of other different species, like arachnids. I believe the centroidy, or the Arizona bark scorpion, actually carries its young on its back for the majority of its I think, I don't know how long, but I know for a fact that they carry them. As well as, I believe, wolf spiders, they carry their young with them. Many spiders actually will lay an egg sac and maintain and stick around them. There are species of tarantulas that actually keep tiny frogs around, so that the frogs eat small species of insects that would hurt the egg sac of the tarantula. So there are a lot of incredible mothers out there of any species, including my own mom and all the moms out there. So we just want to say thank you so much. And we hope you enjoyed all the awesome animals. And the next time you guys see a rattlesnake out there and she's with her babies, give them some space. She's trying to do a good job in taking care of those little babies of hers that she spent, 3 to 5 months carrying around in her tummy. So, but thank you guys for joining us, and happy Mother's Day.